Hi, Casey, David, Fergus,
Howdy.
Junalyn. How is everyone?
Good, and yourself?
Doing well. Sort of back to back today, so I'm running a smidge late. Um,
No.
let's see. Would love to see your guys' faces if you're open to turning your camera on. Um, awesome, Casey, Fergus, love it. Let's see. Hey, John,
Hey, Eric.
is it Junalyn?
Yeah, you pronounce it good.
I got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna drop this into the chat here. It's a question. A link to the question board. Um, Casey, Fergus, Journalyn, have you guys been to previous sessions? First time.
First time.
Okay,
First
awesome.
time, yeah.
Hi, Arlette. We'll give folks a chance to trickle in here. Um, let's see. You guys check the chat. There's a link to the question board. Hello, I mean, good to see you again. Dennis, Shannon. Okay, awesome. Let's get started. Folks will probably be trickling in. There's a link to the question board, so feel free to jump into that and drop any questions in there or upvote anything that is sort of top of mind with you that you want to cover. And I'll just go down the list. So today is just for those of you that haven't joined, first timers. I do this once a week. My background is spent the past 11 years recruiting, mostly venture capital backed. Tech startups and growth companies. And in a former life, I was in software product development, product management. I did a little bit of a career pivot there going into recruiting. I moderated two job search councils through the Never Search Alone community. And this was maybe 9 months ago. Um, and what inspired me to create this group was I found as a recruiter that a little bit of information can go a long way in terms of helping job seekers navigate their job search, how to manage relationships, or develop relationships with recruiters, have some insight or understanding into the motivations of a recruiter and how they think. And so to that end, I hold these weekly sessions every Thursday, 3 o'clock Mountain Time. And I do this for about 30 minutes, largely unstructured. I do have some news that I'm excited to share. I am spinning up a school community. I'm branding it as Coffee with a Recruiter, and it's going to be an extension of what we're doing here. And so it'll give me an opportunity to spend more time developing more focused content with the mission of helping job seekers get that insight into the recruiting process, the recruiting mindset. I like to use this example that, I don't claim to be an expert resume writer, but having seen thousands of resumes, I can give you the perspective of a recruiter in terms of what I look for, what stands out, what detracts, right? But I can't give you 10,000 different formats, right? There's a million other companies or coaches out there that can do that. So what I bring to the table here is the unique perspective of a recruiter. And so I look through the job search from that lens, and that's what I'm trying to differentiate and sort of provide to you as a group here. So I'll share more information about that school community. I'm launching it hopefully this week. There's not going to be too much there, but as you register for this, I have your email address, so I'll be sending out links with more information, and it'll give us a community where we can communicate a little bit more deeply. It's not intended to be a replacement for the Never Search Alone community. It's intended to augment it. So, okay. Beyond that, let's just get started. Again, today largely AMA. Ask me anything. I don't have a program for today. We'll go to roughly the bottom of the hour. And if you guys have any questions or want more clarification or want to offer some of your perspective, on any of the questions or discussion that we have here, please chime in. I think that you guys have a lot of experience that you can share with others, with each other, and I think we all stand to benefit. So that said, let's just dive right in. I see, for those of you just joining, I gotta paste this in again. Gotta figure out a long-term solution for this. If you look at the chat, there's a link to the question board along with the code. Jump in there, upvote any questions that resonate with you, or drop a question in there that is top of mind. So I'm just gonna go through this. Again, I try to find that balance between depth and breadth. So I might talk a little bit fast to give my perspective. Stop me if you guys want to go deeper into anything or if you have anything to offer, but I'll just try to cruise along here. Why is the interview process taking much longer nowadays? There's probably several reasons for that. Right now, we're in a market where companies are slow to hire, particularly in tech. There's an abundance of great talent out there. Um, and so when recruiters are posting these jobs, they might have multiple positions that they're interviewing for. And a lot of companies, from what I've been seeing, is that they're just slow rolling their hiring. Um, there is some element of ghosting or having these fictitious or these fake job postings that they're not really hiring for, but they're just keeping it out there for any number of speculative reasons. One is, they want to increase morale across their team. Recruiters or recruiting organizations or HR might be trying to justify, their internal position. Um, there could be any number of reasons why they have positions posted where they're not really intent on hiring, in the short term, right? They want to sort of maintain sort of pipelines for talent, right? So there could be any number of speculative reasons. But in terms of why interview processes are taking longer nowadays, what I've seen is that there's just companies are they're very slow to hire. They're slow rolling it, right? Um, and so I think part of it is just being patient, right? It's just playing this game of making sure that you have adequate coverage, you're doing your follow-ups, and you're not subjecting your follow-ups too much to sort of the emotional whims or roller coaster you might be dealing with. So to the extent that you could sort of automate or make that a bit more programmatic in terms of your follow-ups, try not to take things personally. When you're interviewing and, let's say you haven't heard back after a week or two or three, even after, multiple follow-ups to them, um, try not to take it personally. I've seen it too many times where folks get so frustrated that they send that email that they regret when in fact, there was interest, they just haven't gotten back around, or maybe the position was filled, but they have one coming up, right? And you were sort of top of that cohort, right? So don't send any emotionally charged emails in your follow-ups. I would just recommend that. It's too easy to do that. It's too easy to do that. So just try to remove the emotion from the follow-ups. Try to automate it. And if you could just back off the frequency of your follow-ups and if you can automate it, that would be that would be ideal. Okay. Let's see. What are the top 3 best things that candidates can do to accelerate landing a job in today's market? Kind of an extension of what I was just talking about. You have to build a system for building top of the funnel, right? It's similar to what we do as recruiters, right? We post a job, maybe we get some inbound applicants, and sometimes we augment that with sort of outbound sourcing, right? And we're building a funnel, right? I think most of you are familiar with funnels. You have to do the same thing as a job seeker, right? You have to build your funnels, and to the extent that you can automate some of these funnels, take a little bit of the emotion out of it, and be programmatic about, moving opportunities through the funnel, that'll be really helpful. The other thing too, and I know that the NSA playbook is a big advocate of focus and niching down your candidate market, and so the whole candidate market fit statement exercises, or everything that leads up to producing a focused candidate market fit statement, um, is highly valuable because it allows you to really focus your energy. The whole job search effort, it's largely an effort in balancing sort of how you're managing your resources, your time and attention. So just like a sales funnel, you want to get to the no's quickly, and that could be a no from your end, right? Like saying, okay, I've learned what I need to learn about this opportunity or this lead. I'm going to say no to it because it doesn't fit my candidate market fit statement. it's, not in my region, or whatever whatever the number of reasons it might be. The faster you can get to know, based on your own research, that, that's great. That's going to help you. The faster you can get to know by understanding more deeply about the company, um, it's going to help you, right? So those are a few things. Let's see. I think being flexible, and I think many of you at this point are trying to be flexible. I know that some folks are like sort of willing to take sort of a step down in title or even pay grade to just get something lined up. You guys are probably already doing that already. I mean, networking. I mean, that's always been a given, right? Networking. Um, yeah, that's all I can think of right now. What are your thoughts on candidates directly emailing recruiters and or hiring managers? I mean, this is part of the networking effort, and I would highly recommend candidates, um, you know, going through the front door, applying, but definitely don't leave it at that, right? Your resume is getting thrown into a stack. Even at even at higher levels where you think that people, like, there's just a smaller pool of candidates, those positions are getting applied to, and it's inundating recruiters. So I would always recommend sort of the side channel, the back channel, in terms of um, emailing directly recruiters, trying to connect with them, or hiring managers. And you have to use a multi-pronged approach. You can't just send one email and done, right? I mean, how many times do you get an email, somebody pitching you some product or whatever, and you see it, maybe you see a name, maybe you remember the name, but they're hitting you up how many times before it actually sticks, right? And maybe it never converts, right? But the point is that it's a multi-prong drip campaign kind of effort. So to the extent that you can automate some of this stuff, and as a little bit of a plug, right? I know I keep saying things like, if you can automate things like this, and there's a million videos out there, but I'm going to start prescribing some ways that you can actually take action on some of these things using things like Make or Airtable. And I'm going to start building out some actual sort of assets that are turnkey that you can start to use, right? If you don't want to build some of this yourself. So that's going to be part of the community that I'm starting to build out. Okay. Um, so yeah, short answer, definitely use multi-pronged approach, email, text, engage with their social media content. I mean, the next question is how do you engage them, right? So try not to lead with just asking for stuff, right? Because I mean, you got to put yourself in their shoes, right? They see these emails all the time. Most people lead with, can you tell me about this job? I'm interested in this. To the extent that you can elevate yourself to from being a job seeker to somebody that can be a partner to them, to the extent that you can elevate that, I think will go a long way. Do you have any actionable suggestions to combat the blatant ageism in today's hiring process? I guess one is acknowledging it. I've seen it in the past, even firsthand. Not so much with me, as I'm just usually an extension of the hiring manager or the hiring team, but I've seen reactions to what they might perceive to be as um maybe somebody in their career too long or whatnot, right? And so the stigma, I guess, again, I'm speaking from my perspective, the stigma that is usually concerned with somebody that's further along in their career, based on my experience, is one that they might not fit in with the culture. And to be more specific, from what I've seen, is that if somebody has extensive experience, there might be some concern around them being able to either pick up new things, or they might have an issue with reporting to a boss, for example, that might be 15 or 20 years younger, right? And so you have to figure out ways to kind of get out ahead of that. I mean, as far as like actionable suggestions, as a recruiter, if I see a resume that's like 30 years of experience, like 5 pages, um, it's too long, right? It's typically too long. That's what I'll say. It's typically too long. Um, I'm most interested in if you have a 30-year career, for example, I'm most interested in the last 10 years. And then I'm really interested in the last 5 years, especially if it's been in different positions, different roles, different companies, right? I will look and I will scan through the stuff beyond that, but I'm most interested in the stuff that's more relevant from a time perspective. Now, maybe the exception to that is maybe if you're a consultant and just raw years of experience is meaningful because maybe maybe my client is an agency and they're selling you as a consultant to their clients, and maybe optically having a 30-year track record in XYZ is valuable, right? So that's the exception that I can think of. I haven't done too many of those searches, by the way. Most of the searches I've done have been for, like I said, VC-backed companies, not consulting companies. They're like product or service companies, and mostly product companies, and largely in tech, right? Startup and growth companies. But that's the one exception that I can think of where it would probably work in your favor to just have raw years and raw pages of experience in terms of presenting yourself. Okay. Let me think if there's anything else that comes to mind as far as sort of ageism. Those are I would say those are two things that I would, when I think about the folks that I've hired for, they're really looking for skills and they're looking for culture fit, right? And it isn't the case in my experience, although ageism or just raw number of years has been tied to some of these stigmas of, they're not willing to learn, or they may have a hard time willing to learn, hard time, maybe moving in a fast-paced environment. And these are things you can combat, right? You can't combat the fact that you have whatever 20, 30 years of experience. And I wouldn't be shy about sharing that if it's relevant. But let's be real, like recruiters and people looking at resumes, they're usually getting 2, maybe 3-page resumes for more experienced roles. So if your resume is pushing 4 or 5 and even 6, that's most people are not sending out 6-page resumes. So it may stick out in a not so good way. So for what that's worth. Excuse me. Let's see, as a recruiter, what are top challenges you're facing in your day-to-day? So general challenges that a recruiter faces, and I appreciate this question. So part of this is like getting into the mindset of a recruiter to the extent that you can understand the challenges, the mindset, the incentives of a recruiter. You can sort of play to that as a candidate, right? And if you can play to that, you can pique their interest. You can align your interests with theirs. So I appreciate this question. I think it's far deeper than what it might look like on the surface. As a recruiter, the top challenges I deal with on a day-to-day are scheduling challenges. When somebody reschedules, that's challenging. Just currently the raw volume of resumes that come in. I know that a lot of recruiters are dealing with this. There's a lot of recruiters right now that are on teams that have been slimmed down. So where in the past they might be handling, I don't know, 5 to 10 requisitions, they might be handling double or even quadruple that. And so giving people the attention, well, giving interviews or giving candidates the attention they deserve, and not only that they deserve, but also that the role requires as a recruiter to identify the right talent, is becoming challenging, right? Just by sheer volume. And so that's a big challenge that that a lot of recruiters are facing. Other challenges recruiters are facing is that their job might be on the chopping block themselves, right? So they may be a recruiter, but they're not sort of insulated or immune to sort of the challenges, the economic challenges that a lot of job seekers are facing right now. So, most recruiters want to make a placement, right? So they're trying to, they want to find that right person for the role. And so it can be challenging finding that right person for the role, especially when there's a lot of folks out right now that are trying to mold themselves to fit into the role. And what I mean by that is, you get a lot of, I get a lot of candidates that are willing to tell you what you want to hear as a recruiter. And so you have to be careful. Well, recruiters have to be careful of that, right? Because, and again, by sheer volume, spending the time needed to really flesh out what is truth and what is, less truthful, it takes time and it takes attention. And so, as a recruiter, that's challenging because there's a lot of folks that are looking for positions. They've been out of work for 6 months, 9 months, what have you, and they're getting into interviews and they're trying to mold themselves to whatever the recruiter is looking for, or the hiring manager or the interviewer. So as an aside, it could be a pattern interrupt that leaves an impression with the hiring manager or the recruiter if you're able to be forthright, right? Because forthright about what you're looking for, and how do you say, um I'm at a loss for words for it. But really sticking to your candidate market fit statement in terms of what you're looking for. And yes, you want to signal some flexibility, but you also don't want to signal that, well, you don't want to signal desperation. You don't want to signal that you'll just take anything, right? Because that does come across to recruiters, and most folks don't think too highly of that. So, let's see, transparency, recruiting for tech positions. I am not recruiting for any tech positions right now. It has been quite slow. Susanna. Let's see. Okay, where am I? How much does posting original content on LinkedIn help a candidate get noticed by hiring managers or recruiters? Suppose you are interested in becoming an AI PM. Would posting AI? I would definitely suggest. So, okay, this is a larger question around personal branding. When you're happily employed and you're doing your job, most folks are not spending too much time sort of marketing what they're doing, right? Because they're just killing it in whatever job they're doing, right? Unless you're a marketer, unless you're an entrepreneur, unless you're a social media sort of influencer or guru, it's your job to do that, and that's what you teach other people how to do. But if you are a designer or you're an engineer or a product manager, even if you're a salesperson, right? You're busy you're busy honing your craft. So it's rare that most folks are not writing about their craft, or most folks are not even sharing what they're learning about their craft with others. They're just doing it. So, in terms of personal branding, there's a huge opportunity for you to establish, further your personal/professional brand by writing about your craft, right? And part of it is even just journaling or writing about your own journey in learning about your craft or enhancing your craft, right? I think a lot of folks, myself included, get stuck in this mindset that I have to be the expert in something before I can write about it, because I'll be this imposter kind of thing. There's a lot of people, you just go to YouTube and just Google anything about how to learn about anything. And there's a lot of people that are documenting their own journey, their own learning journey, right? I think the reason why it's so popular is because, one, people resonate, people relate to people that are learning because they themselves are learning. They want to learn, right? And so you're almost like on a level playing field in some ways, right? When you see somebody going through that experience of learning, right? versus having some expert like talk down to you, right? And so when you think about these infomercials, I don't know if infomercials are still around, but late night when I was a kid, I would see these infomercials. You have this expert that's talking about this product or whatever, but you always have this lay person that's always asking the questions, and they always, oh, this is a stupid question, but this, right? And so people kind of relate to that person. They don't really relate to that expert so much. And so to the extent that you can sort of get comfortable with documenting your experience, whether it's learning about AI, messing around with a new tool or API or something like that, and just documenting it. So especially nowadays, like a lot of the work in documenting is now done for you with ChatGPT, right? Like if you just take a bunch of notes, whether it's verbal note like audio notes or just type a bunch of shorthand notes in your experience, you can ask ChatGPT to clean that up for you and turn that into whatever, a guide, and you can post that now on LinkedIn, right? And now you start to attract an audience that has sort of a similar, they share some similar interests, right? And then you start to project yourself as being that AI PM, right? Because you're out there learning new stuff, right? And so yeah, with respect to the whole job seeking effort, I would definitely recommend posting, creating your own content and posting it. Okay, let's see. Alina, I had an experience with a recruiter where I applied for a role where the responsibilities were the same as my prior role. The recruiter said my experience was insufficient. Why would my experience be insufficient to the recruiter if I already did something very similar? Yeah, that's a good question. There could be any number of reasons for this. If there isn't sort of a one-to-one with respect to title, so when the recruiter is looking for some, to qualify candidates for a particular role, there's several things that they have in mind. One is obviously they're looking for the right person, but that won't be completely obvious at the top of the funnel, right? So in one mindset, they're looking for ways that they can sort of weed people out, right? So they could disqualify people, right? And then the other mindset is, okay, well, what am I looking for about the people that aren't disqualified? Of the people that are qualified, like who would I feel most comfortable presenting to the hiring manager, right? And a lot of it is, I don't want to say recruiters are lazy, but they're looking for the strongest candidates that minimize risk, that are easy to make a case for, right? Because when you think about the process, let's say hypothetically, I have 200 applicants. I go through some process of disqualifying some of the folks, then I look at the folks that are left, and I pick the ones that I think are stronger. And maybe I haven't even interviewed them yet, but maybe just on paper, I look for the ones that are stronger that I can easily make a case for. Then I go, through maybe a cycle or two of interviews. And then of those folks, okay, I pick maybe 3 or 4 folks that I think are qualified, but it's also easy for me to make a case in presenting them to the hiring manager. So it is an exercise of minimizing risk, generally speaking. It's not always the case. An astute recruiter that's working with a hiring manager or hiring team that might not know what they're looking for necessarily, to an astute recruiter may push on the hiring team and say, you should consider this person for XYZ reasons, and have sort of a discourse around that, right? So it's not always that recruiters are just order takers from their hiring managers. And to the extent you can kind of understand that, will give you some understanding of sort of the dynamics there and how far out of the lanes a recruiter might go in presenting you as a candidate. So long story short, Alina, I don't know all the details there, but if it's the case that your experience, even though the actual scope and accomplishments, map one-to-one to the job description, it may be the case that maybe the context in which you were doing it was different. So let's say you were working with a small company and they're a more established, a larger company. So right there, there's a difference there, right? So all things being equal, that recruiter will probably prioritize somebody that has the same experience as you, but they came from a larger company. Again, I'm just using a hypothetical example there, right? So that could be the case, right? It could be titles, right? So it's a little bit speculative at this point, but just to kind of share what might be happening. Um, I hope that helps, Alina. Let's see. I applied for a job with a recruiter only to be told that the job no longer existed. Why do they post fake jobs? So, yeah. So it sounds like you applied for a position that was posted, and then at some point they replied to you and said, you know, the position's no longer either the position no longer exists or the position was filled. Those are two different things. So if the position no longer exists, um, versus the position being filled. I mean, I've seen positions being taken down. Maybe they were looking for a product manager, but after some learning, they determined they need a senior product manager, right? So maybe that position doesn't exist anymore. But to your point, in terms of why do they post fake jobs, I know that could be super frustrating. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the call here. Um, you know, they do that for any number of reasons. I'm not saying that they're right in doing so. Sometimes they just want to build a sort of pipeline. Maybe they do have the position open, but maybe it got filled. Maybe budget was reallocated. There could be any number of reasons why this happens. I think the point is, yeah, fake jobs are out there to the extent that you can identify them. You know, so for example, if you get on a call with a recruiter, to the extent that you can ask questions, like specific questions about the opportunity, like how long has it been open? You know, when are you hoping to fill it? And if you know, obviously based on their answers, you can start to dig deeper. But to the point, to the extent that you can flesh out fake jobs and get to a no faster, then you could save that energy and put it into the leads that are much more material. Um, okay, let's see. I've been on a career break for 3 years, traveling for 2, caregiving for 1. How much detail should I provide in my resume on what I did during the break? Kudos to you for taking a career break. That's awesome. Um, as a recruiter, and this might be a personal thing for me. Like I don't hold this against a person, right? Um, like I'm still very curious about why the person, like what they did in their travels, and to the extent that um, the person did something productive, I hold that in high regard. And what I mean by productive doesn't necessarily mean like economically productive or even directly career productive, right? If they were helping their family, if they were getting their mind right, right? Um, if they can tell me a story around that, for me personally, it sets them apart, especially if they could tell a meaningful story about their journey. And if they could tie it somehow to how it's made them a better human being and ultimately a better team member, right? You're bringing different perspectives perhaps to the team, maybe a newfound appreciation for, I don't know, different cultures if you went to travel the world, right? So it's sort of like tying that into a story that the recruiter or whoever you're talking to can sort of resonate with, right? So much of interviewing and marketing and sales is just storytelling, right? And so that that 2 year or 3 year gap in your professional resume, it's part of your story, right? And so as a recruiter, I'm very interested in that. On the other hand, right, as a recruiter, I mentioned this a minute ago. I mentioned this a minute ago. There is a risk calculation that I'm doing as a recruiter, right? And so if I'm going to present someone that all things being equal, if I'm going to present someone to my hiring manager, um, again, all things being equal, that has a few year break, I need to be able to tell a compelling story. So to the extent that you can tell me a compelling story, and then I can build on that, that's going to help me present you, right? So the rule of thumb is the recruiter will do this risk calculation, whether it's conscious or subconscious, and they're also going to be looking at making a case. If you can help them make the case, and what that means concretely, right? When I submit a candidate or candidates to the hiring team or the hiring authority, hiring manager, what a submission is it's an argument. It's an argument why you should look at this person. And I use shorthand. So think of it as a plus, which is, like the pro, the strength. Think of the minus as the con or the concern or the areas to explore further. I have question mark, which is, maybe a little bit of overlap with things to explore further, but sort of follow-up questions or areas that need to be explored further. And then the star, which is like anything unique about this person, right? So I use that when I'm evaluating, when I'm doing an interview, the information that I'm soliciting falls into that shorthand of plus, minus, star, and question mark. And that's effectively what I'm doing when I'm presenting the candidate on paper or even in person, right? Or to the hiring authority. That's the case that I'm making, right? No one has nothing in the minus column. Did I say that correctly? And no one has a blank in that minus column, no matter how strong they are, right? And so my job is to figure out what those things look like. Sometimes the star part is blank, at least, maybe in the first interview. But, as the person progresses, I'm looking for these things, like what sets them apart, what's different about them, right? And it doesn't have to be, it could be, there was a woman, and I don't know if she's here today, Michelle, but she was a hula hooper, and she mentioned it in the call, I think it was a few weeks ago. And I was like, it just leaves an impression, right? So it doesn't have to be directly, how do you say, directly, it doesn't have to be professional necessarily, right? So anyway, I hope that helps. Okay, let's see. Fergus, thanks. How would you state that? So Dennis, how would you state the job break in your LinkedIn profile? There's a few ways that you can do that. One is, I think there's oh gosh, I forgot there was some sort of badge or something that says like career break. So that's one way to do it. But one thing I would suggest, right, is if you have a long break, and long could be, I don't know, whatever's in your mind, 3 months, 6 months, 3 years. What I'd recommend is like getting involved with some side projects that you're passionate about. It could, I mean, ideally it's something that's professional, aligns with your current career trajectory or path. If it's not, that's fine too. But like, I think something that you could speak about that that does a little bit more on the professional side. It could be a side gig, it could be pro bono work, it could be volunteering, it could be whatever. But to the extent that you can have that as part of your break or as part of your profile to kind of connect the gaps, it prompts the recruiter or whoever's looking at your resume or LinkedIn profile to start asking questions in those areas, right? So you want to prompt them to ask questions, but then you also want to have a nice story, right? Nice narrative to respond to those questions, right? So, all right, we're about 3:38 Mountain Time here. I need to jump. Appreciate all you guys for joining in and sticking around. A lot of engagement on the question board. I'm going to send out a sort of a recap along with more information about the community that I'm spinning up in school. And thank you guys all for being here. Keep your heads up, and I'll see you next week. Thank you all.